On the 25th of October in 1859, the steam clipper Royal Charter rounded the island of Anglesey off of the coast of Wales on what was supposed to be a celebratory last evening in its 2-month journey from Melbourne to Liverpool. Some 500 men and women and children, they were nearly home, and many were feeling blessed with the fortunes worked from Australia's goldfields. Many of the passengers had gold crammed into their pockets, hidden in money belts, stuffed in their luggage, and even locked up into the strong rooms of the ship. The ship had fabulous wealth. And after completing 59 days of a 60-day journey, the passengers were toasting each other at the dining table. But then the day's weather suddenly turned murky and the barometer started falling. And as the Royal Charter neared the rocky cliffs, a menacing haze overtook the skies of early evening. No one knows whether the ship's experienced captain, his name was Thomas Taylor, saw these telltale signs. But one eyewitness reported that a battle between the ship and the storm raged in the next 12 hours. He said this: confronted with a decision 59 days out from Melbourne on a 60-day voyage, passengers toasted the captain at the dining table. Taylor chose to sail on. The decision is one of the most second-guessed in the history of meteorology. It is also one of the most fateful. The Royal Charter bashed into the rocks, and all but 41 of his passengers were crushed or drowned, and many weighted down by the gold in their pockets. Now, if I would ask you, do you want to be blessed? You would say, yes. To be blessed means to be happy or contented. It means to be fortunate. 3 John 2 says, beloved, I pray that you may prosper in all things and be in health, just as your soul prospers. To be blessed means to be healthy. It means that your soul prospers. And one more thing, to be blessed means to have all of your needs met. Now, I am going to give you the secret of a blessed life. I'm going to tell you how to have everything you need. Are you ready? 2 Corinthians 9:6. Remember this: whoever sows sparingly will also reap sparingly, and whoever sows generously will also reap generously. Each of you should give what you have decided in your heart to give, not reluctantly, nor under compulsion, for God loves a cheerful giver. Now, in very difficult financial times, God promises to bless people so that they will have all they need. How is this possible? Paul reminded the Corinthians to give aid to a starving Jerusalem church. The Corinthians were quick to say yes to giving, but slow in making it a reality. So Paul decided to send Titus along with 2 brothers to help so the Corinthians could finish in their giving. Now, at first, the Corinthians were enthusiastic to contribute, but now Paul was having to urge them on to follow through. And when Paul arrived, he desired that no collections would have to be given, that they had already taken care of the offering. Paul added that true giving must not be done under compulsion. Now, why should a person be a generous giver? The disciples were hard at work distributing the food that Jesus had blessed and multiplied, to feed the thousands. And Peter heard a voice behind me as the little boy who had given Jesus his lunch that was feeding now so many said these words, "Hey Lord, about my loaves and fishes, could I get a tax receipt for tax purposes?" Well, why would a person, how could that kind of person be a generous giver? If our eyes are on tax receipts and our eyes are not on God, hey, what's it all about? God loves a cheerful giver. God blesses a cheerful giver. The word says, and God is able to bless you abundantly so that in all things, at all times, having all you need, you will abound in every good work. Believer, through generosity, you live the blessed life. And it's more than money, but every need is met. And the size of the blessing get this, corresponds to the scope of the sowing. I want to say that again. The size of the blessing corresponds to the scope of the sowing. Proverbs 11:24 says, one person gives freely, yet gains even more. Another withholds unduly, but comes to poverty. Then it says, a generous person will prosper, and whoever refreshes others will be refreshed. People curse the one who hoards grain, but they pray God's blessing on the one who is willing to sell. That's Proverbs. God is able so that in all things, at all times, you will have all you need. Why? Because God is sufficient. His grace abounds so that you can abound in every good work. The one who supplies what is needed is God alone. And God who supplies seed and bread enlarges the harvest so that He can reward you and bless you. And those blessings will result in a righteous, generous living. The riches of righteousness, they cannot be compared. Blessing is always more than financial. The pastor Robert Morris in The Blessed Life tells this incredible story. He distinctly remembers the first time he and his wife went out to eat after they'd accepted Jesus Christ. He says he found himself somehow wanting to share Jesus with the waitress who was serving them. Then an idea came to him. If he didn't order a meal, in other words, they just ordered one meal between them, he could take the money, give it to the waitress as a generous tip, along with an evangelistic tract. Maybe the tip would encourage her to read the tract and come to know the Lord. So that's what they did. And before they left, they said a few words to her about how much God cared about her. About a month later, they went back to the restaurant for their monthly splurge. And through the month, they had prayed that God would bless them enough so they'd have extra money to leave even a bigger tip along with another tract. And just as Morris had asked their faithful God to allow them to accumulate an extra $50 that they could leave with a booklet about salvation, sure enough, it happened. And that night, they requested the same waitress and they left her with a $50 tip on a $10 meal. They returned to the restaurant 1 month later, and very eagerly, they wanted to see if the waitress was still working there. And she was indeed. And when she saw them, she said, I read that little booklet you left the last time you were here. Now they tried not to show how excited they were to hear about that. She continued, and I prayed that prayer to receive Jesus Christ at the end of it. And of course, they were thrilled to hear about that, but she wasn't finished. Then I called my husband, she said, on the phone and read the whole booklet to him, and he prayed that prayer too. At that point, Morris said, that's wonderful, but what do you mean you called your husband? Does he travel for a living? And looking embarrassed, she said, no, my husband is in prison. He will get out in 2 or 3 years. We both want to thank you for leaving me that booklet and being so generous. Money has been pretty scarce since he went to prison. Over the next few years, Robert and his wife discipled this sweet waitress and saw great spiritual growth. They also began to mentor her husband in prison. And when he was released, he joined the church with his wife and they were baptized together. Morris had the privilege of knowing these two special people, and he saw the eternal destinies of this couple go into a wonderful reality because they had been changed by the money that they gave in laying a tip on the table. Robert Morris says, I gave because Christ changed my life. Now that is living the blessed life, and I urge you, be blessed.